What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Shot from the Tee podcast for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. I'm your host for the second short-form podcast on part of the Small Golf podcast series, Jason Rouslin. I'm going to be joined later on in the show by @Matt Jones TFR on Twitter, Matt Jones with Stats with Matt. Tonight we're going to do strategy with Matt too. A little bit of MME strategy for you for those people that like to enter 150 contest. I give you kind of my opening thoughts about how I do it, how I approach it, and what my research has told me based on past experiences. So should be a really fun conversation there. And of course, for the whole month of March, leading up to the Masters, I want to thank SuperDraft for sponsoring this show tonight. They are the future of daily fantasy sports is here. SuperDraft allows you to make your dream team. There are no salary restrictions whatsoever. What they do have is a multiplier. This multiplier goes from either 1 times to 1.75 times for the golfers. Each golfer will have their own. So if you want to make your dream team, you want to put Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, man, this is a dream to me right now, Tiger Woods, all in the same lineup, you can do it here at SuperDraft. Also use promo code AWESEMO to get $20 AWESEMO dollars with your deposit of $10 or more. So thanks to SuperDraft for that. So on this podcast, if this is your first time joining, I mentioned I am joined by Matt on the second segment, and we do some stats for the upcoming tournament. On this portion, what I do is I go over quickly my salary guesses from last night, the Opening Tee podcast. Then I go over the sponsor exemptions. In normal weeks, I'd go over the Monday qualifiers, any field changes that have been going on, and the like. And then what I do is I give you my opening bets and salary discussion before I bring Matt on. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about the salary. So for the first time in a couple of weeks, I nailed the top price at 11.8 with Rory. Was off by $200, but got the guy right in Tommy Fleetwood at number 2. He's in at 11,000. Hideki Matsuyama is number 3 at 10.6. Bryson DeChambeau is 4 at 10.4. And then very surprising, I don't really get it, Xander Schauffele is back above 10K at 10K, I should say. As he is the 5th guy that comes in. So I had guessed Rory, Tommy, Brooks, Matsuyama, Reed. So I was off on Brooks and Reed. They're not even close. Brooks is 9.2 and Reed is 9.5. Maybe even, 9.5. I think it's 9.5 or 9.3. So he's not even close. So really interesting there. I got 3 right. I got a price right. 60% plus a price. I'll give myself like a C plus B. It's not bad, but it's not great. I've certainly done better. Okay, let's move on. Sponsors exemption this week. This category is actually going to take up quite a bulk of this portion of the first segment because we actually don't have any field changes this week, or at least not yet. There are no Monday qualifiers for an invitational. As I mentioned last night, there's only 120 or so players. It's a more limited field. It's a higher number of points, more dollars in the prize pool, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and go over the guys that you probably know. Anraban Lahiri, who's got a house in the area. Hank Lebioda, Sam Burns, Kevin Chappell, Stuart Sink, Padraig Harrington, Charlie Hoffman, Rob Oppenheim, Charles Schwartzel, Steve Stricker, Bo Hostler, Doc Redman, Patrick Rogers, Sam Ryder, Robbie Shelton, and then maybe a couple of guys you don't know. Let's see here. Brandon Matthews. Here's a great story. If you don't know the story about Brandon Matthews, you got to go look it up. I'll give you the high level of it. He's a journeyman. He's been a pro since 2017, and he's been on the Korn Ferry Tour and the Latin America Tour. Well, last year he was in a Latin America Tour event. He had a putt to get into a playoff, I believe, and somebody yelled in his backswing and during his putt, dramatically affected the putt. And instead of getting angry, Brandon decided to go over to this fan who happened to have Down syndrome and gave him a big hug and told him it was no big deal and totally brushed it off. And we're talking about a putt that could have changed Brandon Matthews' career if he had made it, but didn't. But maybe it ended up changing his career anyway, as the organizers of this event saw a lot of Arnie in what Arnold Palmer would have done in that exact same scenario, in what Brandon Matthews did, and they have rewarded him with a sponsor exemption this week. Just a fantastic story, a great feel-good story. You do the right thing in the right situation, and you get rewarded sometimes, and that is certainly the case for Brandon Matthews this week. I wish him the best of luck. I hope he goes out and makes the cut. At least makes the cut. If he made some noise in the tournament, that would be a wonderful story, but just making the cut would be great. Sam Saunders will get this start likely every year, the grandson of Arnold Palmer. And then the last one, Chun On-Yu. This tournament is famous for having younger players play in the event and have a chance at him as well. Brandon Thornberry had a chance a couple of years ago. So Chun On-Yu, he's ranked third in the world as an amateur. He's from Chinese Taipei. He attends Arizona State, and it's a senior there. He's, like I said, number 3 in the world official amateur golf rankings. We should probably see him, I believe, come into the professional ranks in a couple of months here. He's probably going to, I wouldn't be surprised to see him graduate right here in the next month or two and be on tour and getting those sponsor exemptions. So this is probably his first taste of a professional golf PGA event, but I suspect it won't be the only one. Chun On-Yu, certainly a name to look out for in the next couple of months. Okay, moving on. We've got a few lifetime members playing this week, as we did last one, Vijay Singh and Davis Love. The third, that actually ends our talks because there are no field changes up to this point, and there are no Monday qualifiers, as I mentioned. So we're going to draft right on in, maybe rather quickly, maybe a little too quick, into our opening odds and salary discussion before I bring on Matt. The opening odds this week, got a couple of guys. I'm going to go back to Robbie Shelton, 300 to 1. Last week I did the same thing, getting good odds on him throughout, so had a really good week. He just putts much better on Bermuda. It's clear in his results. If you look at the splits, he just feels more comfortable everywhere with it. So Robbie Shelton coming off a very good week last week. He hits the ball well. The great thing is, like I said, he's 300 to 1. So obviously that's going to give you very good odds throughout, on your top 5s, your top 10s, and the like. So Robbie Shelton, let's see if I can give you an exact line. Sometimes they don't have top 10s and 20s. It doesn't look like out yet. Normally those take a couple of days. But at 300 to 1, you can probably expect to see something like a 10 to 1 on a top 20, and obviously getting better from there. Probably 30 to 1 on a top 10, and probably something like 40 to 1 or 50 to 1 on a top 5. Next guy I'm going to look at, similar reasoning, Doc Redman. He's 250 to 1. He actually had 11 birdies through 2 rounds. He was leading the field in birdies last week before missing the cut. Not as much trouble to get in, not as hard as a golf course. So I like Doc Redman to try and bounce back with the amount of birdies last week, 250 to 1. I can see him getting into the top 25 as well this week. When we move on up the board, it's going to be really, really hard for me to pass up Francesco Molinari at 100 or more to 1, especially with him providing the goods to me last year at this tournament. That's just an insane price. Obviously, it's really not based off of his recent form. It just seems a little nutty to me that, the guy that won this tournament last year, was a world-class golfer, is now 100 to 1. Scotty Scheffler is also that mark at 100 to 1 as well. And the last one, Colin Morikawa at 50 to 1. I mean, the guy's only played in 19 events and he's already won one of them. So 50 to 1 seems like pretty good value if he can learn how to putt on these Bermuda greens. So those are my opening bets. Redman 250 to 1, Shelton 300 to 1, Molinari and Scheffler 100 to 1, along with Colin Morikawa at 50 to 1. So that'll do it for this side of the podcast. Again, thanks to SuperDraft for sponsoring it here. Again, go check them out. Their multiplier effect is awesome. Last week I had my what I think I've been playing it now for 4 weeks. It was my 4th straight top 10 where I had no winner. I haven't even come close to the winner in my lineup. And been coming in the top 10 every single week. Last week it was Robbie Shelton, who I brought up a couple of times. He was a 1.75x last week. And when you have an event like last week where it's the Honda Classic and it's par is a great score, when you're getting 1.7 points for every par, it adds up pretty quickly. So Robbie Shelton certainly was on my wavelength last week in that regard. So again, thanks to SuperDraft. Check it out if you haven't seen it over there using promo code AWESEMO. $20 on your first deposit of 10 or more. All right, let's bring in Matt on the other side of this. So I'll take maybe a second or two break while we mesh them all together. I will sign off now and say thanks for joining, everybody, and we will see you next week for the Millionaire Maker. We're going to see every single golf shot we want to the Players' Championship. That's what we've been pitched. That's what we've been told, and I'm excited to see it happen. So until then, everybody, see you next week. Cheers. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the second segment of the Shot Free from the Tee podcast. I'm here with Matt Jones at Matt Jones TFR on Twitter for our Stats with Matt segment. And tonight I'm going to add to it too. We're going to do a little strategy with Matt. We're going to talk a little bit about MME builds as I've fielded a few more questions over the last couple of weeks and got some good contests out there for people that are just trying to get into it on DraftKings. I know there's a mini max that I think might even have 5K up top this week. So we'll chat a little bit about that strategy. But first, we're going to go into the stat portion. Matt, how you doing on this lovely, what is it, Monday evening? We're still in Monday, right?
Yeah, it's good, man. It was like 60 degrees here in New York today, so it was nice to get out for a little bit.
Did you walk down Wall Street and tell them to calm down, please? Because I feel like I can't even look at golf right now with what's going on Wall Street.
Yeah, I got nothing on that front. I was teaching second graders today, so.
Yeah, no. If you know what, if I was taught how to buy Apple stock in second grade, actually, I likely wouldn't be talking to you right now. But
fair point.
Yeah, maybe a little hard to talk and teach a 10-year-old how to do that. Are they 10? No, maybe they're not even 10 in second grade yet.
No, like 7, 8.
7, 8. Yeah, it's on the cusp. Anyways, we're not here to talk about stocks, at least not yet. Maybe in the future we'll get into that. We're here to talk about the awesome, beautiful, whatever you want to call it, Bay Hill Lodge and Country Club. It is a great golf course out near Disney World. It's actually closer to Orlando if you're familiar with it's closer to Universal. If you're familiar with Orlando, it's nowhere close to the center of the city. It's on the suburbs. And like I said, closer to Universal. That's where you'll park. Great course, iconic holes, but tough to kind of iron down where guys are going to be hitting their approach shots from, right?
Yeah, it seems like there's it's very it's not as concentrated as a typical week, so that causes some hopefully some opportunities for us, you know.
No doubt about it. And the one I will say, if I had to pick one, if somebody said, "Hey, here's a gun to your head, Jason, pick a gosh darn approach proximity that I can look at for this week," I would say 200 plus. And the reason is a couple of things. One, the lowest number of approach shots hit from 200 yards last year was somewhere in the 15 or 16 range. Mm-hmm. So that was the highest average. And secondly, we have 4 par 5s that are all gettable, depending on the wind, of course, into. So, of course, you're going to see almost 3 or 4 guaranteed a day, unless you lay up, of course. So that's the one I would say. Would you agree if you had to pick one?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the 125 through 200 are all so close to each other that I wouldn't even really pay a ton of attention to them, individually. 200 plus is definitely the one that pops the highest.
All right, let's talk about a couple of players in there. Let's talk about this year. We're 8 events in now, maybe a couple of more. So we've got a decent amount of stats, but not great. Got Abraham Answer popping up on my screener. I really hate to see this next name I'm about to bring up because I played him last week a little bit after his great Puerto Rico finish. And I'm actually not talking about Victor Hovland. I'm talking about Emiliano Grillo. I know, right? And then sponsor exemption this week. This is a random one. He hasn't played this much this week, so it's hasn't played this much this year. So it's a small sample size, but also lives in the area, Anirban Lahiri. And last one I'll throw out, who faded on the weekend after 2 good rounds to open up, was Harold Varner III. So those are the 5 names that I popped up. Answer, Grillo, Lahiri, Varner III, and I'll throw one more out there just because I've got some very good memories of this guy and this tournament itself. Francesco Molinari from last year. It was probably my single biggest week behind the Jordan Spieth British Open win a couple of years ago. So definitely some good memories for me here. I don't know if I'm going to get the same performance out of Molinari this week, though. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's not looking like he has figured much out lately.
No, I
Like
thought for maybe,
7,200, man.
yeah, I thought for maybe a half a round at the WGC Mexico, he was going to figure it out. His approach stats from the previous tournament didn't look all that bad. I think it was Pebble, but his putting looked bad. It didn't bounce back, let's put it that way. He had a dreadful WGC Mexico yet again, so I don't think we're going there. However, how about any of the other guys that I mentioned? And then you can give me a few if you'd like.
Yeah, Answer I like a little bit. He popped in the expected birdies this week, and he's pretty high in the power ranking model. So I can definitely get on board with a $700-800 Answer. As far as a couple of guys who I'm sort of interested in, I don't know what it is, but maybe it's a small-ish sample, but I just can't quit these younger guys. Like Morikawa at 8,400 is, I think, tied for 8th in the expected birdies this week. And I was looking through his last couple of events, and obviously if you're just looking at his finish position, it wasn't like really earth-shattering stuff there, but he's lost basically 12 strokes putting over the last 3 events. So if you figure if he putted neutral during that time, I feel like he could be 9,200 or 9,400. So definitely interested in some Morikawa. And
it's weird. I just want to keep on Morikawa for a second. That's why I interrupted you, because I want to make a point. His win was at the Barracuda, right? That silly one.
Yeah.
I say the silly one. He still won it. It's still a tournament, and that's played somewhere in the middle of this country, right? Mississippi or something like that. I want to say, or is that the Las Vegas one?
No, it's. Oh man,
I'll look it up too while we're talking.
Yeah,
the reason I bring that up is because he went to Cal, right? So you'd think he's a pro event guy, but he really struggled, as you just brought up. Do you think the switch to Bermuda might actually help him? I mean, I'm trying to look. I thought that where he won was actually on Bermuda, so that's why I'm bringing it up, because maybe he just putts better on this surface, or again, it's small sample size that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But maybe just the switch will get him putting better.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, like you said, it is a smaller sample. I have about 20 or so events in my database from him.
Yeah, it's in Reno, Tahoe. That's right. So it's probably actually it might be Bermuda in Reno. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah, so I have him a little bit negative in Bermuda, more so than Poe or Bent. But honestly, like you said, like we talked about it last week. I hardly pay any attention to that stuff outside of the most extreme cases, and I don't think that we know enough about him to really, make like a firm conclusion. He's just good, like everywhere. Like I put him into the splits app, and it doesn't matter. Like you can split it however you want. He's from tee to green. He's pretty solid, no matter how you slice up his events.
Definitely, totally agree. Before I cut you off there, I apologize again. You were bringing up somebody else.
Yeah, just I want to get back on this Matthew Wolff train. I think he's too cheap. He's one of the top guys in birdies or better from my expected birdies. This time around, 7,100, like I said, is pretty cheap. We obviously haven't seen much from him, but he does seem like he's trending in the right direction. Made the cut. Lost a little bit on approach, but a few events ago, he was just spraying it everywhere with his irons, and it seems like he's going the right way now. So, and we know how talented he is.
That's for sure. I'll talk a little bit about Wolff for a second. I watched. He was on featured groups all weekend, and I was in the car coming home from the DFS Open, so I caught a little bit of there. And then he was also on Sunday morning. So before my son got me going, I was watching a little bit of him. And here's what I'll say. He's got a temper at 20 years old. He 3 holes in a row, he smashed his club into the ground like overly hard. Once on the green where he had to go back and actually do some repair work. And then in the next one on the tee shot, it was kind of embarrassing, to be completely honest with you. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong, bro. Like, I used to do this stuff all the time. But I also wasn't a professional golfer. I mean, in fact, I took a swipe at my bag and broke 5 clubs in my bag at once. I'm not saying that anger doesn't happen on the golf course. I know that it does. It's just that I'd rather him do it another way than slamming his club on the ground. It's just not a great look, especially for somebody as young as him.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a function of winning your fourth event ever, and then sort of going through some growing pains. I wonder if this is sort of getting in his head a little bit, which again is not something that I can necessarily quantify, but I can definitely see that would that could be an issue. Like we said a lot of the same things about Rahm a few years ago, right?
Sure did. I think we said identical things about Rahm.
Yeah.
And it's a very similar trajectory. Now, we didn't really see the type of regression we're seeing with Wolff that we did with Rahm. And maybe that's just a little bit of a product of I think Rahm might have stayed in school one more year, which honestly might make the difference. And with Wolff, he's getting angry a little bit more, which I think you're right is totally a product of the early success and probably the fact that in college, the guy was never shooting above 70, ever. Yeah. It was insane. And here on the PGA Tour, you got to come out and play PGA National with tucked pins. That's not how they set up a college tournament. I understand that it's Division I and they set it up hard. They don't set it up PGA Tour level on PGA National. Right. That's for sure. So take that for what it is. There's 4 par 5s here, which is a great transition into our next stat. It's a par 72, 7,400-ish yards. I would think that should help a guy like Matt Wolff. Wanted to ask you if Francesco Molinari, is this just a one event where he does well, or does he do well on all these types of courses? And I hate to bring him up again. You can just brush over him and give me somebody else if you'd like. But let's just see if I guess there's any type of pattern.
You wanna go like 7,300 and up?
Yeah, 7,300 and up sounds fine.
Yeah, I just pulled it up here on the app. He's slightly negative, but not as negative as I thought he would be. He averages 2.8 strokes gained tee to green on the longer courses and 3.9 on the shorter courses. So still, 2.8 strokes is nothing to sneeze at. That's still serviceable for sure.
Definitely. Anybody actually stick out?
Yeah, the couple of guys that I mentioned just now, they're. You can go down the list of the obvious ones. One that I thought was interesting that was more neutral than I maybe anticipated was Bubba Watson. He's a little cheap this week at 8,300. But he's basically the same guy, whether it's 7,300 and up or 7,300 and below. So I was hoping maybe there was a little action I could get there, but it wasn't meant to be.
JT Poston has been going through quite a ride in his salary, going up to 86, down to 76, 69 at the Genesis. All over the place. He seems to play these par 72s a little bit better than others. Just a name that I throw out. How about a couple of names that might have popped up, even a smaller sample size, of guys that we can throw in some of our MME lineups?
Oh man, now we're cooking. There's a few guys down at 60 in the mid 6 to high 6. Matthew Neesmith kind of disappointed me last week.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't putt.
Yeah, it was rough. But he's quietly made 7-8 cuts in a row here.
Yeah.
Been playing really well. He was still great on approach last week. So he's a guy that I'm probably going back to this week. Cam Champ is another guy who sort of popped in the expected birdies. I know he missed the cut at the Genesis last time around, but a couple weeks off, maybe he can maybe figure some things out in the meantime.
Yeah, at 6,900 for both of these guys. Maybe Neesmith gets a little popular, but with Champ kind of missing the cut at Genesis and not playing the last couple of weeks, it's likely he goes very under-owned. And in a situation like that, whether you're playing the mini max, the 50-cent entry, or the $5 drive the green, whatever your fancy is or whatever your bankroll allows you, these are the type of guys that, me personally, I'll start at if we're talking 7,500 and below, I think first and foremost, a lot of people ask me, how many players do I have in my player pool? I have anywhere between 40 or 50 per week. However, if you dig a little bit deeper into that, you'll see that I have 20 guys somewhere around the 1 to 5% range. And what I'm doing there, what my strategy is there, is I'm trying to hit my core guys. I'm trying to hit 4 of 4 guys, and maybe even 5 of 5 in certain cases or certain tournaments. And I'm trying to find that one dart throw. That one last week, throwing a Robbie Shelton, he was in the top 15 and definitely paid off. At min price, paid off tremendous value. Right? Those are the guys that I'm trying to get in there with my Tommy Fleetwood Sung JM core. So, with that being said, I like to use a lot of these guys because I think they're so variable. It's hard to even go overweight on them. So a lot of people ask me, how many players do you have in your play pool? Like I said, 40 to 50. What's the average ownership? Well, I can tell you that on my high end, what I like to do is I like to go somewhere in the 40%, 50% range. There's a lot of different strategies to this, and in my early days in my DFS career, I was doing that, doing the research where I'd study all of the pros and do all that stuff, and that's kind of how I built my strategy. I found that going a maximum of 40 or 50% for your top guy allowed you to still have a profitable week if your top guy missed. I found that if going 75% on your top guy, like I did with Brooks Koepka last week, which is, again, not what I normally do, the likelihood of you having a positive week if they miss the cut is so slim to none. Right. You're going to have to hope for that lottery ticket. So I will say that, again, I tend to be more conservative in my allocations, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm still not going over the field on the ownership percentage, right?
Right.
So I know you had mentioned that you're starting to think about, or at least started to get into the MME game, and it is different. So why don't you, who's just starting to get into it, why don't you give your first impressions of the difference between, say, the mini max or the $5 and the 20 entry max that we used to normally see?
Yeah, it's interesting because just briefly in NFL, I don't build more than 3 lineups. So even building 20 lineups, it was like a pretty big departure for me as far as just like thinking about lineup construction and everything. Even though it's a different sport, you still can sort of take some lessons over from different places. But as far as going from 20 to 150, I felt like I had to make a decision between trying to cover all the plays and building like I build my 20 max teams. Like when I do 20 max, I always have 2 players that I'm like 90% on, and then a couple players that I kind of rotate through at like 40 to 60%, and then a few other guys that I'm more like closer to 10-15%. For 150 though, I'm like, do I just let the optimizer go ham and play whoever it wants in the 6K range? Like, do I limit those guys? You know what I mean? Like it's a totally different mindset, and everybody always jokes like, oh, if you're playing 150, like you just automatically win because you cover all the combinations. But like, I'm here to tell you that's not how it works.
It really isn't. I know there's those plenty of screenshots that go around on the Twitterverse and everywhere else that, just head to 150 lineups and you win. I can guarantee you that is not the case. And in fact, that $5 contest, I've been playing it for 3 years. And while my ROI may not be like negative 60%, it's probably better than that because I've had some good weeks and I've had some top 5s. I've never won the main contest. I've won the secondary contest that they put out for the $5, like 5 or 6 times. But I've never won that main contest. It's extremely hard to do so. You're going up against 150,000 lineups or more, depending on the week. So wanted to talk about that strategy again. There has been nobody that has been consistently winning in that contest. So when I tell you there's not one right way to do that, I truly mean it. All I can say is go for the strategy that works for you. Again, if you're looking to start more conservative, I'd say stick with your maximum ownership at 40 to 50%, but make sure that you're getting in your core guys together. And of course, optimizers all over the place will allow you to do that.
Right. And I think it's also important to realize that the swings that you can take at this and, going super concentrated should be directly correlated to your bankroll. Like if you can deal with, 10 weeks in a row or 15 or 20 weeks in a row where you're really like sort of losing and you're just trying to swing for the fences, that's one thing. But if you have like, $225 on your account and you're playing the mini max at $75 a week, you kind of have to be a little bit more conservative and take more of like the grind kind of approach.
I totally agree and echo that sentiment. Because if all you got is 225, that's 3 weeks. And, I'm not going to say you're going to get a zero return, but if you go overweight like I did on Koepka or on Hovland last week, it's certainly can run you into a little bit of trouble. So just wanted to go over that strategy a little bit. I think it's always a really good talking point and good to get everybody's opinions on it. So other than that, for the Arnold Palmer Invitational, is there any other guy that you just say, actually, you know what, I'll pose it a different question. Is there a guy that has played horribly here that you don't understand why?
I mean, you're putting me on the spot here.
I am a little bit. That was one I thought of right before we came on. I should have told you I forgot, and then I just remembered it. So this is a little tough one. I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. I'll give you mine because he's played here so much. We've seen him in the top 10 of so many tournaments, and it's a Florida event. He lives really close. I don't understand why Ian Poulter doesn't have any top 10 since 2013 here. I got to be honest.
Yeah, I can get on board with that call.
Yeah, just a bunch of top 25s. Don't get me wrong. He's got 4 top 25s. He's made every cut, but no top 10s. Seems kind of interesting to me, especially with how good of a player he's been over the history. So that was my one. If you've got one, great. If not, and you want to pick it up next week, we can go for it. But if you do have one, I'll take it.
Oh man, yeah, I'm struggling right now. I mean, I guess you could say Brooks, right? Like,
I actually hoped you were going to go there because I wanted to rag on him a little bit.
Yeah, 9,200 this week, and he's missed a couple of cuts and withdrew 5 years ago. That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, 126th here back in 2014, but at $9,200 for the third best golfer in the world, supposedly. Some people will think it will be interesting. I do agree, though, with how many par fives there are in his ability, obviously, to take it off the tee. His results are so much worse than even where he normally is in other tournaments, and those aren't really good. So definitely an interesting one there. Well, okay, great ending there. Always like to rag on Brooks. That's a perfect way to end the pod. Matt, thanks so much for joining tonight. We're going to have $1 million first place on the line next week for the players. I will look forward to that. And let's see, anything on that tournament? We got $1 million on the line. I mean, are you excited for that?
Oh, I'm fired up. The players is my favorite non-major by like a large margin. We always have people over. It's a good time. It's definitely up there.
And we get every shot, supposedly. I'm still waiting.
Yeah, allegedly. We'll see if those apps aren't crashing left and right.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Well, on the way out, if you guys could, hitting that thumbs up button is the easiest way to help support what we've got going on here at Awesemo, and of course with this pod with me and Matt. And remember, all of our content that you hear either here or on YouTube, it is on the platform of your choice. So check Matt and I on over there, and of course, check Matt out on Twitter at MattJonesTFR. So thanks again, Matt. We'll see you next week for the players.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.